Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Art of Life project. It's really good to have you here. And today it gives me incredible joy to have Chris Paradox with us. Chris is a wordsmith. He's a poet. He's an inspiration to the world. And he basically is a person that by their living inspires others. And for me, that's just beautiful to witness. And I've been witnessing your work through the internet for so long now, Chris. So it's absolutely brilliant to sit in front of you and have this conversation.
Thank you very much, Tash. I had absolutely no idea I was so wonderful, but it's good to hear.
Well, there you go. There you go. Just soak it in. So basically, the Art of Life project was set up to explore what it means to make our life a work of art. And when we're actually putting that as our focal point, how do we live out of that concept, basically? If our life is our masterpiece, and that's what informs our life, how do we live with that? And so for you, that's really the very first question. What does it mean to make your life a work of art?
That's a beautiful question. That's why I wanted to do this, have this chat with you, because it's such a beautiful question. Mm-hmm. First, it's to acknowledge, it means acknowledging, for me, it means acknowledging my creative power. It means acknowledging that we all have the opportunity to live creatively, which and the heart of that is a lot of my work revolves around this understanding, which was inspired for me by Viktor Frankl and his Man's Search for Meaning, and the understanding that life has no meaning except the meaning you give it, and that making meaning and giving meaning to life, and your life, it's your choice. It's your choice as to what life means and what your life means. So first of all, it's acknowledging that, and once you have acknowledged that, then you have the canvas. You have the canvas of the world, your relationships, your work, your joys, your fears. Everything is your canvas to that work of art. And I suppose the key for me, as you know, I've learned over the years, is where am I living from?
Yes.
So the habit is to live from my mind and my thoughts, which are constantly going. The voice in the head, as I call it. And the learning is to be living from the silent place in the heart. I'll be all cliched about it, but to live from the heart and soul, because that's why people use those phrases, because intuitively we all know.
Yes.
There's a thing called heart and there's a thing called soul, which is qualitatively different to thought and mind. And that's not to disparage thought and mind, because thought and mind is there to help you in this process, but it shouldn't be the driver of the process. And that's when you're living from thought of mind, you're not really living a work of art. You're reacting to everything. Yes. Yeah. When you're from heart and soul, you're originating, and you're coming from places that you could never have imagined. And that's where the magic is. I don't know if it's a famous expression, but the magic is on the other side of my fear.
Yes.
Constant, I'm being reminded that life turns magical when I do the thing that my mind is afraid of, pretty much.
Isn't it? I mean, basically, because that is where the boundaries are, isn't it? Normally, the thing that we're afraid of is us kind of coming to that boundary within ourselves, and we're about to enter the unknown, and the fear kicks in, because it's kind of like we don't know where our foot's going next, basically. Exactly. So to be able to explore that, I think, is quite amazing. But the thing with being human as well is like you're saying, there's and it's quite interesting that I was speaking to Chris Paradox, because I think life in itself is such a paradox. You've got the aspect of ourselves that's universal, and that's where the soul comes in. But then we still have to deal with the individual element of ourselves, and it's kind of like, how do we marry those two things together, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's been my whole journey. And we were chatting before we sort of came on air.
Yeah.
So I sort of took the name Paradox. A large part of that is because the most pivotal events of my life are all very paradoxical. So I gave up a 70 grand a year job, managing director of an advertising agency, married, house, the whole works, to go and live under a tree in Battersea Park and sell the Big Issue for 7 months.
Yeah.
And I was there at the age of 35, never having written a poem in my life, and not considering myself creative at all, started pouring out, and I became a poet called Paradox.
Yes.
8 years later, in an accident, I jumped off a cliff into a river, hit a rock, smashed my leg, got gangrene, nearly died, lost my leg.
Yeah.
But it was the worst thing that ever happened to me and the best thing that ever happened to me. And moving into the park was the dumbest thing I ever did and the smartest thing I ever did.
Yes.
Always, everything in my life, the most powerful are always paradoxical.
Yeah.
And I say that kind of the essence of that and the essence of the paradox of life is this experience of being in a human form, in a human body, in a human body-mind complex, as they say, same time being infinite. So my favourite term for it is I'm the universe in a human suit. Universe in some form. The sun is the universe in a sun suit. A tree is the universe in a tree suit. Blade of grass, you name it. So the paradox of being the universe in a human suit gives all the challenge, the humour, the fear, the adventure. All of it comes from that. Yes. Is that I am everything, and I am just this weak, frail little mistakes and full of fear. So that's a lot to be going on with.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of the human experience, actually. I think we signed up just for that, didn't we? So when you think of making your work your art, and it's kind of interesting asking, what do you think about making your work your art to an artist? But when you think of making your work your art, what comes up with that?
Living it. So as I say, I'm kind of doing a lot more than poetry now, but most of the last decade I've been a poet, and I know that I'm lyrically speaking, technically speaking, I'm not the best poet at all. There are so many better poets than me. I'm a performance poet, so I get immediate feedback as to whether or not what I've done has touched people, moved people, inspired people. It's really obvious, if you've done a good job. And I was always struck. When I gigged a lot, and a lot of my friends are great poets, and I know some amazing poets. My feeling was always they're all better than me. They're all better poets than me. Their lyrics, their writing, their imagery, everything was better than me. But more often than not, I would have the biggest impact on the audience. I would get top billing, even amongst people. And I never understood what it was, but, over the years I've learned it's because I live a poetic life. I gave it all up to live under a tree. And as much as possible, I try to live from heart and soul. And it caused me lots of pain and suffering and loss and all the rest of it. But it's caused me lots of magic and joy and love as well.
Yes.
So my whole life is lived poetically. That informs my work. So if I didn't live that way, no one will be interested in my poetry. I know about that. And it's telling me that what touches them about and moves them about my poetry is that I'm sharing my life transparently as I am. So, so for me to making my work art means living it. I'm always at work. Whatever I'm doing, I'm always at work. Whatever I'm reading, watching, whoever I'm talking to, in the back of my mind, I'm wondering how I can communicate it and share it artistically.
Yes. It's interesting when you are aligned with what you're doing work-wise, because I think there's a merging of life then because it's who you are, isn't it? And there isn't that kind of separation between what you're giving outwardly in terms of your work and the person that's actually giving it. Because sometimes basically people have quite clear distinctions, don't they? And it sounds like if you were an advertising exec, you've probably been through that route where there's a very clear distinction of who you are and who's the person that actually goes to work. So to come to that level of alignment where there is no separation is a beautiful thing.
It's everything. I can't imagine. And yes, I lived the normal life, 9 to 5 for many years, 15 years, and I understand it. And there's nothing wrong with it. It is what it is. Yeah. But on the other side of the fence, I just cannot imagine living any other way. It would seem, that there's a thing called the top 5 regrets of the dying. Yeah. And it's written by a hospice nurse. And the number one regret is, I wish I'd have lived a life true to myself and not the life others expected of me. So that is truly the number one dying regret of people. And it boils down to what we're talking about. It's living a life that is true to you. And that means that if you're spending 40 plus hours a week working to make a living, as we all have to. I know it's something that really kind of winds people up and frustrates people and annoys people. Not everyone can do what they love, but actually, how do you know? Until you try. And usually it's X number of fears. I get it. Your kids, your family, your bills. I do get it. I understand. And actually, a large part of my work, my website, goodbydailygrind.com, is about, because the internet has made it possible now, or more possible than it's ever been, for the average person to make a passive income, to make money, to make a living, either doing something they love or make a living in such a way that it gives them time to do what they love.
Yes.
You don't want to be on your deathbed regretting spending all those years doing something you didn't love. You really don't.
Yeah.
So, for me, that is really making your work hard.
It's interesting because it's kind of like it's a comfort zone scenario that we were talking before, we actually began recording. That comfort zone of basically you hit your boundary and you know that past that boundary, once you get to the boundary, you're safe really, because in essence, you've told yourself, everything that's within those boundaries. Once you actually start going out of the boundary, you feel completely unsafe because you have no idea what's coming. And I think to a large extent, a lot of times people see living the thing that they love as being outside of the boundary, basically. And exploring that sometimes takes a little doing, it's that moment of, jumping out of a plane with a parachute on. It just takes some doing that initial leap. But like you say, the results can sometimes be messy as well, because it's like, jumping out, you never, when you take the leap, the unsurety is an unsurety, and anything can happen in the midst of that. But that's what the unknown is about, isn't it? And there's always a lesson that actually expands you as a result, isn't there?
I'm living proof of, I literally jumped off a cliff.
Yeah.
My leg, so no one knows better than me that it doesn't always turn out like the Hollywood movie. But it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It turned out, the experience, the connection, I had healings with, basically I was estranged from my mum for 30 years. My mum, because I healed that relationship because of that. I'm a much freer, fuller, more loving person because of it.
Yeah.
Experiences, the divine experiences, I could, on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
So, when people ask me, if I knew then what I knew now, I'd still jump. That's the honest truth.
Yeah.
Even though it appeared to be a disaster, faith, it was the greatest thing. So, and I know a lot of people who've made that move from, their work being something that they feel forced to do to pay the bills, but don't like, don't enjoy, even hate. It's not smooth necessarily thing, but there are structures and resources and ways of supporting you through that adventure. And one of my favorite, I just have to get this in case I forget. One of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite people is from Helen Keller, who said, security is mostly a superstition. There is no security in nature.
Yes.
Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. And, that absolutely is the truth. We keep talking about unknown and comfort zones. And it's true is that we tell ourselves, we convince ourselves, our culture tells ourselves that we can have security.
Yes.
If you've got a good job and a nice house and da-da-da-da-da-da. But the truth is, illness, loss, grief, acts of God, anything can happen at any time. There is no security.
Yes.
It really isn't. So there's two ways of spending your energy in my book, and I've done it both ways. One is to try and build a castle of security, financial, material, relational, etc., health. Try and build a castle of security to protect you from these things, which is futile because you can't.
Yeah.
The other is to build a resilience of spirit and a resilience of mind and a resilience of community, that whatever happens, you can respond to it.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so obvious to me that that's the way to live, but our whole culture encourages people to build castles and build armor and try to protect and secure and comfort zone. And I get it, because that's what the frightened little part of us wants to do. But there's another part of us, the divine part of us, that is saying, no, expand, move out, try, fail, go for it. No?
Yeah.
And honestly, you cannot fail if you live your life as an adventure.
Absolutely.
It's possible because everything that's in an adventure is part of the adventure. If it's losing your leg, if it's losing your marriage, if it's losing your house, all of which I've done, but I'm glad I did because it's all been part of the adventure. So you just cannot fail if you go that way. So that would be always my life. If you want your life to be a work of art, if you want your work to be art, live life as what it is, an adventure.
Fantastic. Brilliant. I love that. So basically, when you think of tapping into the inner creator, because basically, as you are saying, to live your life as a work of art, to make your work your art, it really then is about aligning to that greater part of yourself, and aligning to the unknown, but aligning to the divinity within yourself. So when you think of tapping into the inner creator, what comes up there?
I suppose it starts with gratitude. I suppose that's my sort of most fundamental practice. And I notice that when I'm being most reactive, most afraid, most uncreative, I'm being ungrateful. You know, I have things to be grateful about, and I'm not noticing. I suppose noticing really, it's noticing the truth, which is I'm not in pain. I've got a roof over my head. I can eat. I've got friends. I've got the internet. There's just a million wonderful things going on all the time. And when I notice those things, I feel that little joy, that natural joy. And from that natural joy, you have sparks of ideas and things, the possibility opens up. But when I'm not noticing those things, when I'm thinking about what I haven't got and what my problems are and what I'd like it to be and then I don't get these ideas and I don't get these sparks and So just noticing gratefulness, gratitude for what I have and focusing on what I haven't is such a cliche, I know, but it's true. Rather than focusing on what I haven't got, it usually sparks up. And then it's just, in general, receptivity. So it's funny, actually, I've had this conversation with a few friends. At one end of the scale, the thing that sparks my creativity is deadlines. When I deadline, artists don't like them, but we need them. Loads of material. There's no deadline. I fart around for ages. And the other thing that sparks it is good company. So spending time with interesting people and just chatting about stuff, and that tends to spark off thoughts and ideas. And I come back and I've got loads of stuff to write. So, or obviously, consuming other people's art and other interesting things, and that will spark things as well. So, it's a combination of all those things.
And that sounds amazing, because it's kind of what I'm hearing there is about the inspiration, and it's outward inspiration and inwards inspiration, basically, but also the way that interaction can bring out so many different facets of who we are, and also interacting with other people's work as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, I mean, there's basically nothing more interesting than people. Like, human beings are the universe is an amazing place, but there's nothing more amazing than people. So
Absolutely.
And we all love stories. Our whole life is built around stories. So I love watching really good television. I haven't got a television, and I don't watch television, but I watch HBO and I watch great drama and I watch great comedy. Because the people who write great drama and great comedy understand people, and they tell amazing stories about people, and that's what makes something good. And I love. There's so many weird and wacky people. I'm one of them, obviously. Wacky people out there that you can never run out of sources of inspiration if you're interested in people.
Yeah, and I think that's so built into us. It's built into the DNA to connect, isn't it? To actually, because there's that understanding that by interacting with other people, you're also interacting with yourself in a lot of ways. It's almost like when you get in front of someone, for example, who's incredibly intellectual, you become a certain aspect of yourself, and someone who's like really crazy, and you become another aspect of yourself, and someone who's kind of like really quiet, and you respond, and each part of yourself you're being introduced to in that moment. There's a realization, I think, in us that's built in that we need to have these experiences, isn't there?
Definitely, and to keep it as varied as possible so that you can experience more of yourself. We were talking earlier about identifying with one narrow thing, maybe our role at work or your role at home as mother or husband or wife or whatever. But the more we can, interact with a diverse group of people, as you say, the more aspects of ourselves that we discover. And, whenever we feel ourselves being, that's the feeling that we all love.
Yes.
That's being larger.
Yes.
And for that thing, this is a nice segue, coming back to that thing about being a universe in a human suit.
Yes.
As we expand and understand ourselves to be larger, we're meeting and reaching out to the infinite.
Absolutely.
We're bringing ourselves, we're integrating ourselves and bringing ourselves together. So, all those mobile phone ads that talk about, it's good to talk and we're all connected, we're all one. I hate the fact that those companies are using that to sell phones, but it's very true.
And it's really amazing because it hits that trigger with everyone, isn't it? It definitely hits that trigger because we all actually understand it and we all feel it in the depth of our being. It's like connection, there's something to it that is just beautiful, and in the moment we all want to have that. So absolutely, I mean, they use it to sell phones, but they use it basically because it's true, isn't it?
It works, yeah, totally.
Chris, thank you so much. I've really loved talking to you, and that beaming smile that you have and the energy that you give off. Yeah, keep shining. Thank you so much.
Well, you just did what you said. You brought it out in me because you've got a big breathing smile there, and you're bringing it out in me. So that's great. We did a good job with each other.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Very much for having me.
Brilliant.